It started with a rusty old van and a stretch of off-grid woods. That night, I learned that some voices in the dark aren't meant to be followed. Back in the summer of 2014, my girlfriend and I decided to take a camping trip in South Carolina. We were young, looking for adventure, and hoping to escape the chaos of our day-to-day lives. Our original plan was to camp about 45 miles from town, but when we got there, they hit us with a price tag twice what we were expecting. No thanks. So we turned back, and that's when I remembered this little off-grid spot not far from our hometown. Nothing official, no fees, no check-in desk, you just parked, walked in, and picked your spot. It wasn't fancy, but it was peaceful. Wild. Untouched. We got there before sunset. The area was gorgeous, thick woods, a historic bridge, even some of the oldest railroad tracks in the South. A few other cars were parked when we arrived, probably hikers finishing their day. We figured they'd be gone before nightfall. But one vehicle stood out like a bad omen. A busted-up, white van sat crooked near the trail entrance. No plates. Rust streaked down its sides like dried blood. We both noticed it immediately. One of those things you don't say out loud at first because you don't want to jinx the mood. But yeah, it was off. Still, we shrugged it off and found a quiet clearing not far from the lot. We set up camp, soaked in some nature, and eventually crawled into the tent to get some rest. But around 3 a.m., everything changed. A distant voice broke the silence, singing. Soft, strange, out of place. It echoed from deeper in the woods, and with it came the sound of slow, deliberate footsteps on dried leaves. Nothing good ever starts with singing in the woods at 3 a.m. I unzipped the tent just enough to peek out. The darkness was thick, and I couldn't see a damn thing. But the voice got clearer. Closer. The song included this eerie line. "Now won't y'all come out?" Followed by a laugh, dry and rasping like someone who hadn't used their voice in years. I whispered to my girlfriend to stay quiet as we started packing up fast. The singing got louder, and then turned into humming. That's when I heard the leaves crunching. This guy was right there. I grabbed her hand, threw the tent and chairs over my back, and we ran, away from the noise, toward the parking lot. Through the trees we saw lights. But not just street lights. The old white van was running. Its headlights were on. A chill ran through me. Either this guy had a partner, or he got ahead of us. Neither possibility made me feel good. We bolted up the hill toward our car. Gravel crunched behind us, heavy footsteps closing in. And then the voice returned. "Don't y'all think you'll get away?" he called out. A high, mocking tone. Like a predator playing with prey. At the edge of the parking lot, I shoved the keys into my girlfriend's hand. She unlocked the doors, dove in, and fired up the engine while I dumped our gear into the back seat and jumped into the driver's seat. Before I hit the gas, I looked up. The man stepped out from the trail. He was huge. Filthy red hair, a scraggly goatee smeared with something dark, dirt, blood, or worse. His face was wrinkled, like weather had carved into it. He glared at us like we were something he'd been hunting for a long time. And in his hand? A baseball bat. He swung it back and forth like a metronome of menace. "Get back here!" he barked, taking a step forward. I didn't say a word. I hit reverse, whipped the car around, and floored it out of that lot like our lives depended on it, because they probably did. In the rearview mirror, I saw him raise the bat and smash it against the ground in frustration. Whatever he'd been planning, we'd interrupted it. We didn't go home. We drove straight to a Waffle House and sat there until the sun came up. Didn't talk much. Just sat in that fluorescent diner haze, realizing how close we might have come to something horrific. If we had ignored that voice. If we had waited just 5 more minutes. Would I be telling this story right now? It was the 3rd night of my solo camping trip when I saw the first headlamp, and realized I wasn't alone out there. I'd been camping solo in Northeast Ohio, enjoying 3 nights of peace, silence, and starry skies. The first 2 nights went by without a hitch, just me, my hammock, and the woods. But the 3rd night? That's the one I wish I could forget. Sometime around 3 a.m., I woke up needing to pee. Nothing unusual. I slipped on my boots, grabbed my hatchet, just in case, and wandered about 10 feet from my hammock to do my business. That's when I saw it. A headlamp, flickering about 80 to 100 feet away, drifting between the trees. It didn't move like someone hiking or wandering. No, whoever it was kept standing up, sitting down, pacing in place like they were anxious. Or waiting. I watched them for 10 minutes, frozen, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. My instincts screamed that something was wrong. And then another light appeared. A second headlamp, this one even closer, maybe 40 feet away. Too close. Too convenient. One person alone in the woods is one thing. Two pacing in silence in the middle of the night near my campsite? That was a problem. I dropped to the ground, covering myself with leaves. Not moving. Not breathing too loud. The second guy wandered within 10 feet of where I was lying. He didn't see me. Lit a cigarette, cracked open a beer, and just stood there for a while like this was the most normal thing in the world. Then he tossed the can on the ground and wandered off into the trees. Once I was sure he was out of sight, I crept toward the first guy. I moved slowly, sticking to the shadows, keeping the hatchet close. That's when I heard his phone dinging, text after text. I got close enough to see the glow of the screen lighting up his face. He was receiving messages. Then he stood up and started walking toward my hammock. My heart dropped. I ducked back into the leaves and lay completely still. I couldn't breathe. All I could do was listen. Branches snapped. The tarp above my hammock tore like paper. My mess kit hit the ground with a crash. I heard them. There were voices now. Multiple. "He was just here," one of them muttered. They were tearing through my things, flashing my own flashlight around like a trophy. It flickered across the trees as they moved off into the darkness. Once the light was distant enough, I got up and made my way back toward the ruins of my camp. What I found looked like a crime scene. My tarp and hammock were shredded like someone had attacked them with a blade. My mess kit was stomped flat, boot prints ground into the metal. My flashlight, backpack, and rain gear were all gone. I checked the spot where the first guy had been. Just some trash left behind. Chewing tobacco pouches, a lighter, 8 empty beer cans. Then I checked the area where the second one had stood. That's where it got worse. A plastic bag of white powder, meth. Cigarette butts in a pile. And a mound of human shit. No toilet paper. Just left there, like an animal marking territory. That's when it hit me. If I hadn't woken up, if I hadn't gone out to pee, I would have been in that hammock when they came. I didn't waste another second. I gathered what little gear they hadn't stolen, slung it over my shoulder, and disappeared into the woods without looking back. Those men weren't just drunk or high. They were hunting something. Maybe me. Maybe someone else. But I was damn lucky I slipped through their fingers. And I won't be setting foot in that part of the forest ever again. He walked out of the woods at 1 a.m. like he owned the place. The way he looked at our gear. I knew we were being assessed. My best friend and I go camping every year, just the two of us, same tradition since we were 13. And up until last year in the Blue Ridge Mountains, I'd never once felt truly afraid. It was peak season when we rolled in, and campsites were scarce. That first night, we pitched our tents on the side of a mountain that might as well have been a wind tunnel. By morning, we were exhausted, but still buzzing from the beers and good times the night before. That afternoon, we hit town, stocked up on more supplies, hung out at a local bar, and got back just before sundown. We managed to find a more secluded spot out of the wind and settled in for the night, fire going, drinks in hand, the usual vibe. It was sometime around 1 a.m. when a flashlight cut through the trees, aimed right at us. We assumed it was a park ranger. Who else walks up to strangers in the woods that late? But as the light drew closer, we realized it wasn't a ranger at all. Just a guy, maybe in his 50s, wearing basketball shorts and a t-shirt. Behind him was a woman in her 40s, eyes low, barely making contact. No introduction. No apology for the hour. He just launched into small talk like we were old friends. started asking weird questions about our camping gear, especially our lantern. Complimented how cool it was. Then casually dropped that he used to be law enforcement. That set off alarm bells. It felt out of place, like he was trying to establish dominance, or justify something in advance. Then it got worse. He pointed his flashlight toward our tents and said, "Oh, that's where you guys are sleeping, huh? Cool setup." But the way his eyes darted between us, and the way his flashlight scanned the ground around our fire, our bags, our boots, it felt like something else. Like he was counting, measuring, assessing. I could feel it. We both could. That wasn't a casual conversation. That was a checklist. Once he got a good look at our setup, he fell quiet. The chat just ended. He and his girlfriend turned and disappeared into the woods. Just like that. We didn't say a word. We didn't need to. My friend looked at me, gave the smallest nod, and we both knew it was time to move. We packed up in near silence. No music. No jokes. Just the sound of the wind and the zip of tent bags. I don't know what that man wanted. But I know what it felt like, someone figuring out how hard it would be to come back later and take something. Or someone. We thought it was all fun and games, just a stupid prank in the middle of a rainy night. But someone else joined in, and it wasn't us. It was 2016, and my buddies and I had been itching for a good camping trip for months. We finally found a weekend that worked for everyone and planned a stay at our usual spot, Los Padres National Park in Southern California. A storm was rolling in, but being the reckless guys we were, we shrugged it off. We loaded up our cars and drove the 45 minutes out to the forest. The campground was massive, around 100 lots circling a big open clearing. It was family-friendly, and usually pretty busy, but when we arrived, the place was strangely empty. The rain was holding off, but we didn't waste time. We picked a spot under some thick trees for extra cover and pitched our tents close together, only 6 feet apart, so we could throw up a massive 30 by 30 foot blue tarp overhead to shield us from the rain and muddy ground. It worked. The tarp made it loud to move around, sure, but it kept us dry. That night, we huddled around the fire and realized how few people were out here. A couple of RVs, maybe, but no other tent campers. We were alone under the trees. Eventually, I called it a night. My buddy Liam was crashing in my tent, while Ethan and Caleb were in theirs. Now, I'll admit, this next part was dumb, but at the time, it was hilarious. Before passing out, I whispered to Liam that I was gonna prank call Caleb and Ethan. I dialed their number from a restricted ID, and when they didn't answer, I called again. This time, they picked up. Caleb answered with a shaky, "Hello?" Liam and I were barely holding in our laughter as I leaned into the phone and let out a low, raspy breathing, straight-up horror movie style. Then I hung up. They freaked out. We could hear them whispering, panicking in their tent. Eventually, we fessed up, had a good laugh, and the 4 of us settled down. I was out like a light within minutes. Liam, Ethan, and Caleb stayed up talking for a while longer. When morning came, I was already cooking breakfast by the time the others rolled out of their tents. That's when Ethan looked at me and said, "Hey, that prank last night. It went too far." I raised an eyebrow. "Too far? We just made a phone call." "No," he said. "You didn't just call us. You walked around our tent. You came inside." I froze. I looked over at Liam. He was just as confused as I was. "We didn't do that," I said. Ethan and Caleb looked at each other, uneasy. "We thought it was just part of the joke," Caleb added. "But it wasn't funny." We heard footsteps crunching on the tarp. "We thought it was you messing with us again, but then the zipper opened. We saw a hand, someone started to come inside." They said the silhouette backed off when Caleb called out my name. Whoever it was didn't respond. Just turned and walked off into the rain. Liam swore he hadn't left the tent. I sure as hell hadn't either. And that's when we realized someone else had been out there. Someone who saw the perfect chance to slip into our joke and turn it into something worse. It had rained all night. The tarp was noisy enough to mask footsteps, and nobody else had tents out there. Just RVs. Just us. That's the last time I ever joked around like that on a camping trip. Because it stopped being a joke the moment someone else decided to join in, and we still have no idea who they were, or what they wanted. We laughed about the prank that night. But the laughter didn't last long, because the man we thought was one of us wasn't one of us at all. When my friends confronted me over breakfast, I thought they were still joking. But the more they explained, the less I was able to breathe. After I'd fallen asleep, the three of them were still up. All was quiet, just the steady tap of rain on our blue tarp, when they heard footsteps crunching around the tents. At first, they thought maybe a raccoon had wandered into camp. But these weren't light, scampering footsteps. They were heavy. Slow. Human. Then the man started pacing. Over and over. Circling our tents in deliberate figure eights, his boots brushing against the fabric as he moved. And then, fingers. They said they could hear them, rubbing along the walls of the tent. Up and down. Testing the seams. Then came the silence. A zipper slid open, quiet, but unmistakable. Caleb and Ethan lay frozen, eyes half open, pretending to sleep. A silhouette appeared in the opening, just the head at first. A man's face peering in, watching. Then he stepped inside. He didn't say anything. Didn't move toward them. Just stood there, staring. The shadows made it impossible to make out features, but both of them noticed the smell, liquor. It lingered in the air, thick and sour. Eventually, the man stepped out and walked away. They heard the footsteps fade into the night. At the time, they had assumed it was one of us. Just a messed up prank. But now, putting all the pieces together at the breakfast table, it didn't add up. Then, as if summoned by our paranoia, he walked into our camp. A man, late 50s maybe. Filthy white shirt stained with sweat, blue jeans stiff with grime. He reeked of alcohol, and his words slurred together in a smoker's growl. "Good morning, boys," he said, grinning like a decaying jack-o'-lantern. "How'd y'all sleep?" We didn't answer. He asked for a cigarette. We told him we didn't smoke. Then he nodded and said, "Well, if you want to check out my RV, stop by any time." He shuffled off toward the restrooms, which were just steps away from his RV. But he used our restroom. Walked all the way across the campground just to get close. A little while later, he came back, this time not to use the facilities, but just to talk. "Any of you boys looking to buy an RV? You can check mine out right now, go on in." We declined. Politely, but firmly. He lingered a moment, eyes scanning us again, then walked away. He left a few hours before sunset, but the way he kept glancing back, like he was memorizing us, never left my mind. Maybe it was all coincidence. Maybe he was just a drunk old man with no sense of boundaries. But the smell, the pacing, the figure standing in the tent doorway, we all knew. That was him. And if we hadn't woken up, if Ethan and Caleb hadn't pretended to be asleep, if he'd decided he wanted more than just a look, we would have never seen him leave. The quarry was known for its crystal-clear water. But once the sun went down, something darker surfaced, and it wasn't just in the water. This happened about 4 years ago, when my boyfriend and I were still pretty new in our relationship. We were looking for a fun way to spend a weekend together, so when my sister suggested a snorkeling trip at a nearby quarry-turned-campground, we were all in. It was supposed to be beautiful, crystal-clear water, peaceful camping, and a handful of eerie but interesting things submerged at the bottom. An old school bus, a helicopter. The kind of stuff that sounded cool on paper, until we got there. The first part of the day was actually great. We snorkeled near the shallows, splashing around, laughing, just enjoying each other's company. But once you left that shallow safety zone, the quarry dropped off, fast. 65 feet deep. And that water, once bright and blue, turned to a pitch-black abyss. That's when I realized something. I'm terrified of deep water. Even knowing that stuff was just junk at the bottom, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching us from down there. Like those sunken relics weren't all that was buried beneath the surface. Still, we had fun. We dried off, packed up our gear, and headed to our little grassy patch where we had set up our campsite. It sat just down a hill from the road, nestled under some trees. Quiet. Secluded. Too secluded. As night fell, we cooked dinner and curled up under a blanket by the fire. It was peaceful, at first. But then, as the last of the fire died down, and we lay in the tent, I couldn't shake this strange unease. I kept thinking about that drop-off in the quarry. How quickly the water went from glassy to black. How quiet everything had become. We were the only ones in that patch. No other campers nearby. No lights. No sounds. Just us, a tent, and the darkness pressing in from every side. We didn't know it yet, but something had already noticed we were alone. The water wasn't the only thing with depth that night. Something darker had followed us, and it wasn't afraid to be seen. Our tent sat in a wooded patch, just a short distance from the road. Across from us was another campsite that looked lived in, but the people weren't there when we arrived. As night crept in, my boyfriend and I roasted hot dogs over the fire, enjoying the quiet, until our neighbors returned. They didn't stay up. No fire. No noise. They just went straight into their tent and vanished for the night. That's when it began. We were sitting by the fire when I saw something move, a dark figure standing up the hill, just beyond the tree line. The way the flames flickered made it impossible to see clearly, but one thing was obvious. He was staring directly at us. He lingered there in the shadows, half concealed behind our neighbor's truck, watching. Not moving. Not blinking. Just watching. After what felt like an eternity, he turned and walked behind the trees near the road. I watched him closely, tracking his movement between the trunks. One tree. Then the next. Then another. And then he vanished. He either stopped behind one of them, or he was still there, hidden just out of sight. My boyfriend saw it too, but he tried to play it off. We both did. Naively. We actually forgot about it for a while and decided to take a late-night walk down to the quarry. The stars reflected off the still, black water in an eerie shimmer. It should have been beautiful. But standing there, surrounded by 65 feet of unknowable darkness, it felt like something was waiting below. When we got back to camp and crawled into the tent, that same uneasy feeling returned, worse this time. I couldn't explain it, just this crawling sense that we were being observed. I didn't say anything, but then my boyfriend whispered, "Do you feel like we're being watched?" That hit me like ice water. I asked him why, trying to keep my voice calm, but we both knew it wasn't paranoia. Something was off. We stepped outside the tent and stood by the car. That's when I had a great idea, that maybe the safest place to be was the center of the open field in the middle of the campground. My logic? If someone came at us, we'd see them coming. But we weren't alone out there. As we crossed the field, we spotted him again. The same dark figure from earlier, standing in the distance. He was walking. Slowly. Casually. In the same direction as us. We changed direction. So did he. We said nothing, but we both knew. If he follows again, we run. We cut to the left. He matched us. That was it. We bolted to the car. I looked back as we got in, and I swear to God, the figure didn't flinch. He just stood there, at the edge of the trees, watching us. Then, step by step, he retreated into the shadows, never breaking his gaze. We agreed to leave. Our gear was still out, but we packed it as fast as we could, hands shaking, eyes constantly darting to the woods. We made it home around 1 a.m. The next day, I told my dad what happened. He just nodded grimly and said, "Good. You might have gotten murdered out there." Turns out, 2 people had died at that campground while snorkeling. I never found out how. Maybe they swam out too far into the black. Or maybe someone waited for them in the dark. Just like he waited for us. And whatever he wanted, It wasn't just gear. He followed me through the store like he belonged there. Like this was all normal. But everything about him felt wrong. It happened a few years ago, just a regular night. I ran to Target sometime around 8 or 9 p.m., not for groceries or a full shopping spree, just a couple random things. The place was quiet. Oddly quiet. I headed to the far side of the store, away from the food and toward the home goods. It was practically dead over there, no one in sight, no music playing. Just the soft hum of ceiling lights buzzing overhead. As I browsed the shelves, I noticed someone enter the aisle. Didn't think much of it at first. I didn't even look at him. Just figured it was another late-night shopper. After a minute, I drifted to the next aisle. And so did he. I glanced up, just a quick look, and saw a man in a Gilliam shirt and a baseball cap. He looked to be in his 30s, maybe early 40s. He didn't say anything at first. Just stood there for a second, like he was waiting for something. Or someone. Then he walked toward me. That's when the weirdness began. "Hey, do you know where the desk lamps are?" he asked. I told him no, that he should probably ask a store employee. Polite but firm. But the moment he spoke, I felt it, that deep, gut-level alarm that your body triggers before your brain catches up. He was smiling, sure, but it didn't reach his eyes. His tone was too casual. His energy? Off. Like he'd rehearsed the question. I turned back to the shelves, trying to shake the feeling. But when I glanced up again, I realized he wasn't walking away. He was still standing nearby, just behind me now, pretending to look at some random items that didn't even make sense for that aisle. My skin prickled. I casually moved to another aisle. A couple more feet between us. 30 seconds later, there he was again. Same distance. Same fake browsing. That's when I knew. This wasn't a coincidence. This wasn't someone looking for desk lamps. This was someone tracking my movement, waiting for something, maybe for me to be alone in just the right spot. Maybe to follow me out. Maybe worse that he came in with no cart, no list, no purpose. Just a question, and a plan. Something in my gut had been screaming since the moment I met him. That feeling never let up. When he asked for a ride out of nowhere, after pretending to need help finding a lamp, I knew I was dealing with someone who wasn't just awkward or lost. He had waited. Watched. Picked me. I told him no, flat out. He didn't argue. Didn't even say, "Okay." He just turned and walked off again, like that was the end of it. But it wasn't. When I made my way to the checkout minutes later, I spotted him again, this time standing near the clothing racks, facing the checkout lanes, scanning the people. Scanning me? The lamp he supposedly needed so badly. Gone. He hadn't bought anything. He was waiting. I paid for my stuff and made a beeline for the exit, suddenly hyper-aware of every sound and shadow. I didn't walk, I hurried, all the way to my car, glancing back once then twice. 15 seconds later he came out. Empty-handed. No bag. No receipt. Just eyes locked on the parking lot like a predator tracking prey. I watched him from inside my car. He walked down one row, then the next. Scanning every car like he was searching for something. Or someone. I started the engine. Headlights flashed on. From across the lot he turned, spotted me. And then he jogged. Not toward the store. Not toward the exit. He ran to a beat-up old pickup parked way at the back of the lot. I watched him yank the door open, eyes still darting back toward me. I didn't stick around to see what came next. I floored it out of that lot and made sure I didn't take a direct route home. Just in case. He never followed, thankfully. But I know this. He never wanted a lamp. He looked like one of us. Dressed like us. Talked like us. But I don't think he ever worked there. This was years ago, back when I was still in high school and working my second ever job, a cashier at Target. I was 17, still living at home, still figuring out how to deal with adults, customers, and people who didn't quite feel right. I'd been working there for about 2 or 3 months when this happened. It was a night shift, and I clocked out around 9:45 p.m., just like usual. The lot was quiet as I stepped outside and started walking toward my car. That's when I saw him. A guy, maybe early 20s, wearing the standard Target uniform, red shirt, khakis. I'd never seen him before, but Target's a big place, and people cycle through fast. He smiled and said, "Hey." I smiled back, thinking he was a new hire. He asked, "You just getting off?" I said, "Yeah." "Me too," he said, and gave me a high five like we were teammates or something. We chatted a little as we walked through the lot. I asked if he was new. He said yeah, he just started. I asked where he worked in the store, because I hadn't seen him up front near the registers. That's when things started to feel off. He looked the part. Said all the right things. But something about him just didn't add up. When I asked what department he worked in, he hesitated for a second. Just a beat too long. Then he said something vague, like, "Oh, in the back, mostly. Stock stuff." Didn't give a title, a section, nothing specific. Still, I was young and didn't think too hard about it. Maybe he was just shy. Maybe he was new and didn't know the lingo yet. He kept the conversation going as we walked through the nearly empty parking lot. Asked me how long I'd been working there, if I liked it, whether the managers were chill. Then, as we reached my car, he paused. "Hey, do you live around here?" That stopped me. I laughed it off and said, "Yeah, sort of. Not far." Then he asked, "Do you usually work this shift?" It was framed like small talk, but something about the question didn't sit right. Like he was trying to memorize my schedule. I shrugged, saying it changes all the time. Then he smiled, nodded, and said, "Cool. Maybe I'll see you around." He didn't get into a car. He didn't unlock anything. He just turned and walked back toward the building. But here's the part that stuck with me. He didn't go in through the front doors. He circled around the side of the building, toward the loading dock. At first, I figured he just forgot something. Or maybe he had parked out back. But the next day, curiosity got the better of me. I asked my manager if we had any new hires in the stockroom, maybe someone who started recently. She looked confused. "No," she said. "Nobody new in the back." "Why?" I described the guy. Red shirt. Khakis. Early 20s. Tall. Friendly. Said he worked nights? She shook her head again. "There's nobody like that here." So either he was lying, or he had gotten a red shirt and khakis for a reason. To blend in. To look like he belonged. To make someone feel safe. And the worst part? If he hadn't said, "Hi." If he hadn't made conversation, I never would have questioned him. I would have just assumed he worked there, just another Target guy heading home after a shift. I never saw him again. But I still wonder, how many nights did he walk that parking lot? And who else did he talk to before vanishing around the back? He said he lived near me. He even drove the same way home. But I don't think he lived anywhere near me at all. As we chatted in the parking lot that night, the guy told me he did a little bit of everything at Target. That he'd been all over the place during his shift. At the time, I didn't question it. Now, it feels like a lie meant to keep things vague. We parted ways when I got to my car. I told him good night, and he returned the gesture before heading toward his own car, parked right beside mine. He lingered there a moment, looking at his phone, just like I did. Normal enough. Then I pulled out and began the short drive home. He followed. At first, I didn't think anything of it. He'd said he lived near me, and we were on the same road. It made sense. Until we reached the turnoff right before my neighborhood. That's where he kept going straight. I figured, okay, he lives further down. I turned. Now, the road to my house is long, slow, and quiet, especially at night. After a few minutes, I noticed a new car enter the road from behind. The headlights looked familiar. I shook it off. It had to be someone else. But when I turned onto my street, and then into my driveway. I didn't see anyone until I got inside. From my front window, I spotted a car, his car, driving slowly down the street. Not parking. Not turning. Just crawling by, headlights sweeping over houses like he was looking for something. Or someone. I ducked below the window. I didn't want to believe it. But I knew he had followed me. He didn't live here. I'd grown up on this street. Never seen him before. And if he had lost me before the turn, why circle back? I stayed hidden. After a few minutes, the car vanished. He didn't come back that night. And weirdest of all? I never saw him again. Not at work. Not in the lot. Not anywhere. He hadn't just lied about where he lived, he might have lied about everything. The job. The name. The reason he was there. And if I hadn't parked where my car was hidden by the trees, maybe he wouldn't have just driven by. She wasn't wearing a coat. She didn't come out of the store. And for some reason, she just kept walking. This one's more recent. A few months ago, my girlfriend's car was in the shop, so I was picking her up from work at Target. She was scheduled to clock out at 10 p.m., and I arrived a little early, around 9:50. The parking lot was nearly empty by then. I parked in a random spot near the back, sent her a text letting her know I was there, and she replied that she was finishing up a few things before heading out. Nothing unusual. I put on some YouTube and killed time. That's when I caught something in my peripheral vision. A woman. She was walking through the lot, far from the store entrance. Not coming from Target, not heading anywhere specific, just sort of pacing. Slowly. Randomly. She was wearing short sleeves. No coat. And it was cold, close to freezing. At first, I thought maybe she was headed to her car. But she never went near any of them. She just drifted back and forth. Meandering. It wasn't until I looked away and then back again that I realized I hadn't seen her come from anywhere. She was just there. She never got in a car. Never left. Just kept pacing the lot like she didn't know where she was. Or worse, like she knew exactly what she was doing. She was far enough away that I couldn't make out her face clearly, but close enough that I could tell she didn't have a jacket or bag. Just short sleeves, jeans, and what looked like thin shoes. It was almost freezing outside. And yet she moved like it didn't bother her at all. I kept glancing up between videos. She wandered the lot, not toward the building or the road, just between cars. At one point, she passed under a parking lot light, and for a second, I saw her clearly. Blank expression. No phone. No sense of urgency. Just staring. Not at anything in particular. Just drifting. It started to feel like she wasn't confused. She wasn't lost. She was waiting. A few minutes later, I saw my girlfriend walk out of the store, bundled up, waving at me. I looked back toward where the woman had been, but she was gone. Gone. Not walking toward the entrance. Not headed toward the road. Just vanished. I watched my girlfriend closely as she walked through the lot, half expecting the woman to appear behind a car or step out of the shadows. Nothing. When my girlfriend got in the car, I asked her if she saw anyone in the lot, especially a woman walking around without a jacket. She gave me a weird look and said, "No, why?" I didn't want to freak her out, so I just said I thought I saw someone earlier and that it was strange. But as we pulled out of the lot, my eyes scanned the rows of parked cars one last time, and for a split second, I saw her again, in a different section of the lot. Standing completely still between two empty parking spaces, not walking anymore. Watching. I don't know what she was doing out there. Maybe she was high. Maybe she was homeless. Maybe she needed help. Or maybe she was waiting for someone who never showed up. But it felt like she was waiting for anyone to approach. And I've learned that sometimes, the scariest thing you can do is give someone exactly what they're waiting for. She didn't want help. She didn't want directions. She wanted me to open the door. After seeing her wander the lot, I had tried to shake it off. People do weird things sometimes. Maybe she was lost. Maybe she was high. I told myself whatever I needed to. But when I glanced up again, she wasn't pacing anymore. She was behind me. Close. I turned in my seat just in time to see her walking straight toward my passenger side door. My heart dropped. Her face was expressionless, like she was sleepwalking, or worse, pretending to be harmless. She reached the window, leaned in, and knocked. Soft at first. Then harder. I was about to crack the window, just a sliver, but something in my chest screamed don't. The tapping turned to banging, full-force fists against the glass. She was trying to get in. I threw the car in reverse and backed up fast. She broke into a full sprint, chasing me as I swerved to the left and hit drive. I gunned it to the other side of the parking lot, heart pounding. I parked at the far end, texting my girlfriend. Some woman just tried to break into the car. She's still out here. I figured she'd be out any minute. I waited. No sign of the woman. Maybe she was gone. But then, out of nowhere, she was back. Charging! Like she'd been watching from somewhere just out of view. I hit reverse again, backing away before she could reach me. She stopped, breath visible in the cold air, and just watched as I drove to the front of the store. That's when I finally saw my girlfriend walking out. I pulled up, she climbed in, and I peeled out of that parking lot without saying a word. She thought the story was funny. I couldn't laugh. That woman didn't want anything normal. She didn't beg, didn't speak, she just tried to get in. And twice, she chased me like she knew she had one job. I still don't know what she would have done if I had cracked the window. But something tells me she wasn't asking for directions.